What's up, guys? As you can see, I have a new headset. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the July. Right now it's really, really hot outside. Really, really warm. Not much to do. We saw the MLB All-Star game. So on a really hot day, what do you like to do usually? You play board games. So tonight's episode, Algos and 10, season 3, episode 6, will be another set of a board game that I particularly love to play. It's called The Settlers of Catan. If you've not played this game before, it's the ultimate strategy resource game, and it's actually quite fun to play. It's a little complicated, so I'm going to actually simplify it tonight to something that's actually very simple in computer science called file I/O, which is file input and output. And yeah, it's boring. It's like a BU Northeastern Systems course, about directories and files and low-level stuff. But I jazz it up with some Catan. So let me share my screen and show you what we got. As you see on my screen, we have the file I/O for the Settlers of Catan episode. So I'm finally ready to move out of my comfort zone and start exploring some more low levels detail of systems programming. To make it not like a boring systems BU NEU course, we're going to jazz up with a classic, Settlers of Catan. So to set up this Catan directory, we got to first find some components, of course. Make sure I'm legit in my thinking. Here is the official Catan shop website. So if you click on the website, it'll give you some good stuff about Catan. Of course, this game is like sold separately, so you could buy it for like players of anywhere from even just 3 players to like any number of players. And this YouTube will tell you how to basically play the game of Catan. So the game of Catan is quite fun. There's like a lot of different like pictures and animations. And it really is a great team building exercise to when you put the hexagon together. You see all these different little hexagons and these little numbers. They represent the point value of each piece of land in Catan. So it's like almost like Dungeons and Dragons with like resources. And you also have some water and you have some great pieces to put together. So it's quite a nice strategy game. It's like a cousin of Monopoly in a way. And of course, this POS over here, Bad Robber, is going to be our nemesis of the episode tonight. Without further ado, I'm going to first get to the first part of the episode, which is very simply making a Catan entry directory. So we have 6 main colors of pieces, red, orange, brown, white, blue, green. We have 4 main type of resources, sheep, wheat, ore, and brick. We have 19 unique hexagonal terrain tiles, which is usually related to resources. And we're not going to consider any duplicates. We then have 6 coastal frame pieces like the sea or ocean bearing. We have 9 extra harbor pieces, 20 wooden sediments, 16 wooden cities, 60 wooden roads, 95 resource cards. And to simplify this, we'll use a Java public enum type for each of the main type of resource card in Catan, with 25 development cards, 4 building cost cards, 2 special bonus cards, 18 number tokens, so all the tokens from number 1 to 18 for each settlement, 2 6-sided die, and we have an enum of set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a pair of dice, and you'll see that really awful robber pawn, because this pawn really can hurt quite a few people in Catan. And just like the heat outside, it can burn you, so be careful with that robber. So similar to D&D Monopoly, from season 1 all the way back when this Algos 10 thing basically started, and generally my favorite childhood board game, which is going to be the very next episode, chess. Shout out to Magnus Carlsen. There are quite a few moving parts. So how in the heck do we put them in a directory? And since it's a Catan simulation, avoid other players from cheating by knowing what our game plan already is. So you got to incorporate the concept of encapsulation. Since we're playing with 6 different servers CPU in this Catan simulation game, we must use encapsulation or face a cheating scandal that makes the Houston Astros look good. Just kidding, they're absolved this year. Let's implement a very simple directory abstract class called Catan entry that has protected fields in all of the in-game components. So here comes my handy dandy terminal. So my handy dandy terminal, which I'm going to actually increase significantly their space, because last time I noticed from episode 5, the terminal was rather hard to see. This time there should be no issues. So I'll make a quick VI, Catan entry, Java. And of course, this will all be in my GitHub. So if you don't understand what the code is doing, I'll have a better version, including a game playable version on my GitHub. The first thing we do, of course, is to add a comment to see what this thing is. So this is a Catan simulation using Java OOP entries with files and directories structure. And of course, there's Algos in 10, season 3, episode 6. Author is me, Jason Liu. Just make sure you have good documentation in general when it comes to coding. Having worked at both Dell and UHG Optum, it's very important to know good documentation for Fortune 500 work. So this will be very easy, very similar to Gail's solution for the entry in CTCI. To public abstract class Catan entry. Now I'm not gonna write everything tonight, just want to write the very basic stuff. So for Catan entry, we really have all the resources here, essentially. This tonight's episode is very hands-on. I'm not gonna have any pseudocodes. It's gonna be legit me coding live, which is pretty good. So we're gonna have, first of all, a protected directory, Catan, basically a Catan game. Next step, just to make sure we understand the episode a little better, I'm gonna go back to my screen and just copy paste all those resources so that I don't miss any piece. So I'm gonna copy paste all this as a comment. It's a huge comment, so I'm gonna add in actually a little more space. Yep, there we go. I'm gonna unshare this screen and I'm gonna share the next screen, which is my terminal. All right, great. So now we can actually do some more coding here. So with protected directed Catan, they've protected colors. So you have basically a string array colors. And this is a new string array with red, orange, brown, white, blue, green. And they also have protected string array resources, which is new string array. So in Java, you can actually define the string array directly with all the elements. I'll know very quickly if this is compile or does not compile. Off episode. So these are the components. I forgot the semicolon here. This will not compile otherwise. Then protected int tiles 19. That's going to be final. Protected int coastal. That's going to be 6. Protected int. Now this is going to be int array, so I'm going to have to do int array settlements. And here, since it's going to be a size 20, so new int array 20 size. Then protected int array again, wooden cities. So always make sure you use underscore for Java. 16. Then just make this a little easier. I'm going to do 2YYP. So that's like a nice little shortcut from a Vim to not repeat everything. So you have wooden cities, you have wooden roads for Catan. And that's going to be, of course, a lot of wooden roads, 60 of them. And then, oh my goodness, 95 resource cards, which is going to be a string array. So I'm going to do a new string array of size 96 resource cards. So you can see with something like this, you want to make sure you're not messing up the types of each resource, or you're going to have to redo everything, which is going to suck. So protected string array development cards. So for Catan, development cards are sort of like Monopoly's chance cards. Like they tell you what to do for your developments. So if you want to like build a settlement or you want to move the robber or best case scenario, win the game by basically having the longest road, you can do all sorts of stuff with the different cards. You also have something called the building cost cards, which will tell you how much it would cost you to build the building. It's sort of like a mortgage in Catan in a way. And there's 4 of them. And we don't normally use this type of card, but special bonus cards is also something used in Catan. It's like really just nice to have. We're not going to use it much in this episode, but it's nice to have. And of course, very important, the 16 number tokens. So I'm going to do the following. Protected int array tokens equals new int array. And then here's a little Java trick. For I in range 1, 18, print I. Yeah. So that's what you do in Python. In Java, you do the following instead. You do you basically do a list comprehension. So you do something very similar to a list comprehension. You essentially do the following. It's a new int array, double int array. Here, you determine how many cards there are, 1, and then there's 18 cards. There's a double array. The first element is how many types of tokens. There's only one type, really. And the second element is the number token. So you could really just have only one int array, and that would be enough for the episode. So you can see this is another good example of design pattern choosing, like which design you want to use. You can use the protect enum here for dice. So dice 1 is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. Then YYP, copy, dice 2, same thing. And there you go, almost there you go. You've got one little stupid thing. I hate this guy. The robber. So you have protected, and the robber is a character. So I'm actually gonna do robber equals new, and that's it. That's the robber. So outside of that, we have a few very basic stuff. So we're gonna have a constructor here. I'm not gonna write down the constructor in the episode, but you know what a constructor is. It basically helps you build the episode. So protect public, Catan entry, you know, blah, blah, blah. Bunch of stuff in the constructor and blah, blah, blah. That's about it. All right. After that, you got something called setters and getters. This is something also very straightforward. In any OOP, it's like, you know, public string array, get colors, and then blah, blah, blah. So like, this is really simple. So on and so forth. And that's really it. That's the bare bones Catan entry class we could use in general. So one thing I noticed about this Catan thing is that because it's so general, we can't actually quite use it for a game. So I'm going to show you what step 2 requires then. So we've set up the game. Now we need to set up the Catan resource files. And yes, we're going to use a little Kubernetes, not too much, a little Kubernetes. So we can jazz up some Kubernetes, mainly multi-container pods and some basic liveness probes and services. So a quick recap of what it means by liveness probes and services. I'm going to bust out the whiteboard. So for example, you got the following. You got one probe here. This is like another Kubernetes concept that people should know very well. There's something called a liveness probe. So this basically checks if the probe is healthy or not. Is the pod healthy? So it's really a concept of health checking. You got a pod. So the main concept is really pod health check. And there's 2 types of probes. Liveness, and then later in next episode, actually, the readiness probe. because we have to make sure, of course, the next episode, spoiler alert, that the chess is actually ready to be played before you make a move. So for a liveness probe, we do the following. We make a connection to the pod here and on port 8080 to make sure it's connected to the pod. So it's sort of like a concept of HTTP GET from web dev. So I'm writing quotations HTTP GET 8080 from this probe. Now I can do the following, the HTTP put, which is like the receive, basically. So I can do the following. I can, okay, Control C. See if this works. No, okay, it does not. Okay, no copy pasting apparently in Zoom. That's all right. Changes to red. I can say HTTP put 8080 back to pod. And that means I basically say the probe has gotten what I want, so therefore I can now send the message back to the pod over here. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. I actually messed this up, sorry. So this should not be here. This should instead go this way from pod to the probe, and then the other way around from the probe to the pod. And there you go. That's your basic understanding of a liveness probe. With that crappy drawing out of the way, I'm going to show you the quick and dirty Kubernetes solution offline. So here is basically what we want to do. We have player one that wants to trade 3 sheep, 2 ores for 5 pieces of brick and 3 wheats with player 2. Player 2 accepts the trade and builds a settlement that's worth 20 points. So in Catan, each settlement is worth 20 points. And then player 3 brings a new proposition, decides to build a coastal settlement, which comes up with a double point boost, like 40 points. She proposes that she will trade with player 2 10 pieces of ore and 4 sheep with 5 pieces of brick and 12 wheats. Player 2 rejects the offer, it's just too much. So we're going to use Kubernetes liveness probes and also 3 main services that represent the players 1, 2, and 3. So for this thing, we're going to only for this episode show you what generally a Kubernetes probe would do. So time to go to my trusty handy dandy documentation and get a copy. To configure liveness, readiness, and startup probes. Don't worry, none of this actually relates to CKD exam, it's just my own example. So there you go. That's a nice, good-looking copy I could just use here. Now, of course, if you're going to prepare for the exam, you don't want to copy pasta code like this. But since I'm just showing it for S's and G's, it's good to like use this code. So I'm going to reshare my terminal yet again, and this time I'm going to name it the following: Catan liveness.yaml. Paste here the YAML file. Write a few things away. Catan liveness test. And I'm not going to really kubectl exec this thing until it actually works. So Catan liveness exec. And it's going to, of course, be called Catan liveness. So this thing is just basically telling you the sleep and everything, right? So for the liveness probe to actually work, we need to do the following. We need to actually apply what's said on this episode. So we're going to do the following. We're going to first, instead of doing initial delay seconds, we're going to do the following instead. So we're going to actually do something called multi-container. So this is the first container we have, right? So we just copy this and paste here. And this container is going to be called player 1, so Catan player 1. And in her image is going to be not busybox, but player 1. And args for this guy is going to be following: a bin shell -c, and then instead of touch will be echo. And then his real command is going to be, I want 3 sheep, 2 oars, 4, 5 pieces of brick, and 3 wheat. Yes. And then you redirect this to player2.text. So it's like a text file for player2. Then you want to do the following. You want to copy paste the size probe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6YY P. All right, now I copy all this crap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So copy this thing, 12YY, and then P, and it's Catan player 2. And you really just do the same thing over and over again. So it's really crappy design, but what can you do? So player 2 is basically, I want to build a settlement. And now you redirect it back to player1.text. So I want to build a settlement. And the probe is still the exact same as before. So you want to continue adding more space here, adding in period seconds, 15, 5. All right, player 3. Now I'm going to just copy all this stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 actually. Oh, not a lucky number. Uh-oh. 13 YY. And then P. And then player 3 is just crazy. She wants to trade with everybody. So for player 3, she just wants to trade with everybody. I want to trade. So I want a coastal settlement. Trade with player 2, 10 ore and 4 sheep with 5 pieces of brick and 12 wheat. And then of course, this will be sent back to player 2. And player 2 is going to add in something else here for another echo. So this is going to be YYP, refuse trade with player 3. So here's a trick I learned. You can do actually X to delete everything you want in Vim. And that's a really good way to make sure you don't delete accidentally the entire line. I refuse to trade with player 3. And there you go. There's your liveness probe essentially. So let's just see what happens if I run this damn thing. Okay, we waited. Oh, look at that. It actually got created. So this thing works. To make sure it works, so we get the pod, Catan liveness exec. And yeah, the error image pull happened, but at least it worked, which is good enough. So there you go. That's how you make from the episode part 2. And now finally, part 3. And for the services, it's actually quite easy as well. So before I actually go to part 2, I'm going to go back to my terminals and I'll skip a step here. So I'm going to make another service here. So kubectl Catan service. And this time I'm going to actually, sorry, it's actually vi Catan service. I'm actually going to do the following. I'm going to go back to here and search for an example of a service with liveness probe. So some of these liveness probes are pretty complicated and they don't really require a whole lot more to understand what HTTP is or like what puts and gets are really. So I'm going to search for service here. So there you go. There's your service example that just copy paste and mess around with a little bit. So instead of calling my service, call it Catan service. And then of course, it really just doesn't matter what the name is. Just say Catan player service. And then the port is 8080. Target port is not this thing, it's 3030. So for service, you want to make sure it actually connects to something, right? So we're going to do another thing in addition to service. We're going to actually have container port. So instead of just only having a selector, we're going to have a container port here instead as well. So we're going to have another pod for the player. So I'm going to add in 3 little lines on top to indicate separation. 1, 2, 3. That's a great Kubernetes way trick to make sure you have a separator. So we're not going to name this Nginx. We're going to name this service Catan pod. And the name is not called proxy, it's called player 1. So container name is going to be player 1, and then player 1 stable. Actually, player 1 Catan. Then the container port is going to be 8080, and the service of the name is not that. It's going to be called instead Catan service. So if you run this thing, hopefully it works. Yep, it works. So if you do kubectl get service, Catan service, whoops, Catan service. You'll need to actually make sure it's done right. Yes, Catan dash service. And you want to dash OY to like get more stuff, and it seems to work pretty good. So let's try the pod. So get pod, Catan pod. And there's an image pullback off, which means we probably had an illegal image, but that doesn't matter. In the real Kubernetes, it'll like give you a better spec. So finally, we get to part 3. This is a long episode full of like jumping around, so bear with me, guys. So we finally get to part 3, which is the robbers and offers. So we now wrap up the episode and show why it takes forever for Catan to finish. Implement a new abstract class that extends the already existing entry class called the robber. And then the robber class works similar to what we have in part A, but we add in additional methods, 2 horrible methods, 2 awful methods. The steal resource, which is going to tell you the number of resources, the number on the dice, and which player 1 or player 2 or player 3 or up to player 6. And also roll 7s, which only tells you how much resources to steal from the player. And the dreaded situation that if you roll a 7, the robber can move the hexagonal piece of their choice. So it's a random int Java number generator for this part with seeds 1 through 18 and steal those resources from said hexagonal piece. So no wonder robbers so hated. That's it for the episode. So we could go over maybe, tiered knights and special cases, but for now, that's it. So to wrap up the episode, I'm gonna write a really quick abstract entry class. So vi Catan abstract robber, actually vi robber .java. And this is really simply a robber robber class that takes away resources from Catan players. So we're going to have public class robber extends Catan entry. And the robber really doesn't have much more than just 2 protected things. So protected int num resources to steal. So for now, it's going to be 0 because the robber is not yet doing anything. And of course, protected array list. And then you have actually array list of ints actually, so integer. Roll 7, so rolled 7s. The number of times it rolled a 7. So basically how many times it rolled a 7. So actually don't need array list, just do int array. And for now, it's just going to be up to the total number of hexagonal tiles. So new int array 19. And now we're gonna need that seed. So here is the random generator seed from Java. So before we continue this, we're gonna do the following: import java.util.star, and then do some random stuff. So I'm gonna slightly use Stack Overflow for a minute to figure this out. Move my camera down here. Of course, if it's an interview, I would not be doing something like this, but it's a good practice to know how you Stack Overflow appropriately. You really don't need any threading in here because it's pretty stupid. Like, it's not really worth doing anything here. So I'd rather do something very simple with regards to the randoms. So this is some pretty crappy solution, not what I want. So I'm gonna refine my search a little bit. Add the word seed to show that it's a seeded number for randomness. So you want to do like a RNG, a random number generator, which is pretty useful. So you could do the following. So you could do the following basically. You could do, for example, because you don't want people knowing the seed. So you can do private method, private random seed robber, new random, and this is integer, of course. So just do new random, and then this is a function that doesn't return anything. So int random generator robber. And since you're trying to determine how many seeds there are, you can just do this: return generator next int. And then you can do like a for loop here. For int, so integer, for integer I equals 0, I equals 1, sorry, I less than 19, I plus plus. You can basically determine the next int random here. And that's how you do it. Then going back to the episode, I'm gonna do more coding down here for the terminal. This is a bit long-winded, I'm sorry, but it's important to know what's going on here. So then you have the two methods that the robber can use. So methods robber can use to make the game more frustrating. So one method that robber can use is steal resource. So this returns nothing. So public void steal resource, int num resources, int dice, and of course there's enum player. I'm gonna put that in the rest of the offline. And we're also gonna do put public void roll sevens, which is int num resources, and that also will code offline. So that's it for the episode. So that's it with the episode. Stars of Catan file directory with Jason Liu. Algos Intense season 3, episode 6. So next episode, talk about Magnus Carlsen and some good old chess. Make sure you guys get some water and don't get heated up. Thank you. Good night.